Good evening. Tonight I'd like to talk about dioramas and processing landscapes. Dioramas were invented by theatrical set designer Louis Daguerre and panorama painter Charles Marie Bouton and first exhibited in Paris in 1822. The original dioramas were presented at theatrical events featuring immense translucent painted backdrops. Scenes of various spectacles were transformed by alternating front and rear projected light. Daguerre later changed the world with his co-development of the daguerreotype photo process. Dioramas evolved into contained presentation showcases of science, history, and feats of engineering. Dioramas are now most closely associated with natural history displays and viewed in darkened rooms, often employing taxidermy and elaborate painted backgrounds. We are fortunate to have one of the best natural history museums in the country here in Austin, the Texas Memorial Museum on the UT campus near the stadium, where this beautiful Texas shorebirds diorama can be seen. In this remarkable display of compression of time and distance, a venomous Texas coral snake is seen in a swamp in East Texas, transitioning to a western diamondback rattlesnake, shown in a desert setting in West Texas, over 700 miles away. Diorama settings often exist in a mysterious state of suspended time, where convergences of creatures are meticulously arranged against a seamless painted backdrop, creating a window on a staged and modified reality. By meticulously modifying the scale of the 2- and 3-dimensional elements in the transitional areas and the painted backdrop, the illusion of scale, depth, and distance is reinforced. When watching cartoons as a kid, I found myself focusing on the background landscape imagery as much as the action in the foreground. I grew up in a rapidly developed area about 10 miles west of Minneapolis. Observing the landscapes at high speeds as a passenger on trips to the city and on cross-country family road trips profoundly impacted my formative visual processing, resulting in a lifelong automatic practice of attempting to visually organize chaotic landscapes. My interest in architecture and the history of developing landscapes form the core components of my photographs and my artwork. Landscape historian J.B. Jackson wrote, "A landscape is a 3-dimensional shared reality." Since 1991, I've been a resident of Texas, a geographic area so vast that it includes 15 land resource zones. The focus of much of my documentation of the past 20 years is the territory between Austin and southern Texas Gulf Coast. Travel in these areas of South Texas reveal diverse landscapes that include remnants of overlapping histories of indigenous and immigrant cultures, Texas battlefields and historical sites, vernacular architecture, and vestiges of automotive leisure travel of previous eras. I've also long been fascinated by border territories, transitional zones between rural, light industrial, and urban landscapes. My photo here shows a motel with a manicured landscaping at the edge of town in Cuero, located next to undeveloped farmland on the left. In this early image I shot when I was 19, the primary focus is on the red warning flag, but I was most interested in the shadow, indicating objects outside the photographic frame that we cannot see. Early on, I also worked on a series of late-night flash pictures. I was interested in how the flash compressed the details of the environments into confined, contained space, eliminating the background details. In this image, the architectural elements are flattened even further into shapes and planes for improved visual coherence. Moving out into 3 dimensions, it can be fascinating to come upon temporary structures and evidence of human marks and the delineation and layers of time. Iconic architectural elements such as Corinthian columns, mansard roofs, and picket fences can be copied and recopied to a degree that their representation becomes distilled or minimized to the point of abstraction. This image is a triptych of a traveling carnival with the entertainment area on the left, the temporary mobile structure at the center containing an attraction, and an exit into a light industrial area on the right. This landscape is in a strange crossover territory near Ingleside with an agrarian environment on the left, a temporary pod structure in the center, and a new overlapping layer under construction on the right. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss my work. It's an honor to be here tonight.
About 24,000 years ago, one of our ancestors took a hard piece of stone and carved a relatively soft piece of limestone to create this Venus figurine, which was found in Austria in 1990. People debate what the meaning and the significance of ancient carvings are, but one thing that we can all agree upon is that since the beginning, humans have been compelled to create and to represent the world around them. Stone carving is, by its nature, one of the most endurable forms of that effort. Much of what we know about ancient societies is told to us by the stone carvers from that period. Even after the advent of writing, we still can learn as much, if not more, about what a society valued and its aspirations. For most of history, there have been carvers in every community. They were esteemed members and leaders of that community, held in the same regard as doctors or lawyers. And an example, there used to be a lot more of us. In Chicago, there were 4,000 stone carvers at the beginning of the 20th century. Today, there are a little more than 60 of us in the United States. This is some of us. We get together and commiserate. Texas has a rich history of stone carving, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we were under an ocean about 100 million years ago. And if you dig 2-3 feet down, you'll find a layer of bedrock that's fantastic for building, as a building material. An interesting aspect of our history is that we had a confluence of stone carvers from the South, the Spanish, and of the Mayan tradition. And we had from the East, we had German, Italian, and English stone carvers come to Texas. And you can see a lot of the boiling pot aspect of that in the architecture that was built during that time. An interesting story that I want to share with you is of an Italian stone carver that came to Waxahachie, and he fell in love with a local girl there. And he decided to incorporate her face into the capitals that he was carving as he worked on the courthouse there. Unfortunately, they fell out of love. And if you walk around the courthouse, by the time you get to the back, you can see that he's transformed her into a grotesque. I began stone carving when I was 19 years old. what was a summer job to begin with quickly turned into a lifelong passion. Watching the master stone carver that taught me take a block of stone and turn that into a work of art is something that I'll never forget wanting to learn. The process of stone carving actually hasn't changed much in 24,000 years. You still take a hard edge and adjusting the force and the angle, you cut away the material of the softer rock. The most recent invention that I use regularly is the pneumatic hammer, which you can see at the top here. That was invented in the 1800s, and that kind of replaced the swinging mallet. Other than that, all of these tools would be recognizable to a carver from the ancient world. I've kind of recently have begun describing myself as a stone carving evangelist. And the reason is because I truly believe that stone carving and ornamentation can transform an architectural space. And it can change the way that we relate to each other, the way that we see the world around us. Perfection is something that I'm often asked about. How do I achieve perfection? And I will tell you that I don't try to be perfect. I think of perfection more as you might think of a lodestar on the horizon. It's something that I navigate toward, but I don't try to get to that star. I use that to point me in the right direction. A perfect example of this is capitals on the top of a column. Usually that comes in a set. There's usually more than one. And something that a handcrafted stone carver can do is create a little bit of variety within that form, so that even though you may have a series of capitals, they all are slightly different, and they all have their own unique quality. Every ornamentation has the potential to become a work of art if it's thought about and it's created with passion. I have a quote that I think about frequently by Alvin Holm, who's an architect out of Philadelphia, and he says that ornament is an act of love, and that we adorn the buildings that we love, and that we love the buildings that we adorn. This is a series that I've started called Stone Twitter. It takes me about 2 days to carve. And I've also started working, this is a rendering that's not actually created yet, but I did successfully crowdfund that just recently. And so this is a 20-foot tall monolith, which is inscribed with the words, "It's chaos, be kind." And if you're familiar with Patton Oswalt and his late wife, Michelle McNamara, you're probably familiar with that phrase. I appreciate it. Thank y'all.
I'm an artist. I never wanted to be anything else. Luckily, I came from a sympathetic household. My dad was a relatively successful and sometimes controversial sculptor, Houston artist Bob Fowler. My mom got her degree in fine art from UT, and so did I. They never discouraged my chosen vocation. We all knew that how hard it could be, and they never let on that it might be harder for a female artist. It wouldn't have mattered. After graduating, I dove into painting to live here, an old fourplex which still stands at 14th and San Antonio Street. I waited tables, then worked for Whole Foods Market. Although my artistic output never died, it was slow. But it was at Whole Foods Market that I met musician Brian Beattie. Brian valued my art as much as his own art. We were married and had kids almost immediately. We believed we could both be artists and still have a family, which I now know was pretty naive. But we doubled down and took ourselves seriously as artists, for better or for worse, and pursued our careers with kids along for the ride. I think we both hoped that we would inspire our kids to follow their own dreams. There were plenty of lean times. Once, when our daughter was about to enter high school, she begged me for a cell phone. We had not yet provided a cell phone for her or for her older brother. I explained that we simply could not take on one more expense. She looked at me with disdain and said, "You guys are the most irresponsible parents ever." Yeah, I continued to paint my pictures. My art, like my kids, grew and changed. And my father was a big influence on me, but I didn't always trust his opinion. Once, a few years before he died, in my studio, he saw a painting I had just begun, just barely mapped out, and he said, "Valerie, it's done. Put a frame on it." And that's funny because I usually spend months to complete a painting. But what he saw is something probably inherited from him, like handwriting, the original line quality, and pure compositional form that will stay with the painting throughout. What he didn't know is that as the painting progresses, it leads me again and again into new moments of excitement. And if it's a good painting, the original bits are all still evident and part of the painting's final whole. I've been called a landscape painter, but that's not how I see it. I see my paintings as scenes and settings which employ elements sourced from the natural world. The inspiration is almost always personal, but my goal is to communicate. This scene is a green space near my home. It's on a walk I would take with my son when he was just entering middle school. We were both a little frightened. Who's not frightened of middle school, right? The thicket surrounding us seemed to sympathize. And this is a peach orchard that I drove past on my way to Fredericksburg. I made mental notes: pink clouds of flowers, wet, dark gray bark, ruddy red earth, and I remembered that my daughter had been sitting next to me on that drive. To me, the painting is about my daughter and the exquisite beauty and brevity of youth. Here, I saw an exceptionally animated and twisting and waving agave on a neighborhood street, and I thought of a cartoon with only plants and rocks as characters. I find joy in the Earth's ability to heal. 1 year after the historic wildfires in Bastrop, I witnessed a tree slowly dying while new spring growth was bursting from the ground all around it. I found beauty in a splayed open and violated embankment along Lady Bird Lake. The pink dirt looked like flesh, and the broken roots like torn veins, and the rocks like recently unearthed buried treasure. And I found beauty in the broken geometry of the rocks of a waterfall, a cool reward at the end of a long hike with my family in upstate New York. My father-in-law, already suffering the effects of Alzheimer's, which would ultimately take his life, led the hike, a path he knew from his own childhood. Recently, I've begun to make large mixed media works on paper. Some are scenes from my Travis Heights neighborhood. This is on a block that had been relatively wild and overgrown for years, but has since been cleared for development. And this wildscape is in Austin's Montopolis neighborhood, an area rich in history, predating Austin as a city. This particular spot is owned by dear friends of mine. They've kept it a little wild, fostering its natural beauty. Most recently, I've been collaborating with Brian Beatty, illustrating his musical work and enlisting him to make music for my visual work. This is a cranky. It's a 30-foot long illustration on scrolls cranked along to musical accompaniment, and it tells a story. Now, our kids are mostly grown, and both are artists in their own right. Our daughter, a powerful visual artist, is studying at the Art Institute of Chicago, and our son, a very modern sound designer, works here in Austin. And I am the most irresponsible and proud mom ever.
So, growing up in East Texas, I wanted to be a fine artist, and so when I set out into the world, I lost my confidence and started looking for what I could do. And so, on a road trip in and going through Austin, I felt the spirit of this city, and I saw all of these great neon signs. And right at Lamar and 12th, I saw this Terminix bug, and I turned to my buddy and I said, I'm moving to this town and I'm gonna make neon signs. So I did. I came here in 1992 and got a job at Ion Art, and worked there for a couple of years, and we did a lot of modern contemporary pieces, but then someone wanted this Jack's beer sign as a decor in their Cajun restaurant, and I thought, this is what I want to do, the Art Deco style with the rust and the weathering. So I went out on my own and started Roadhouse Relics. I started building commercial signs strictly in the 1940s and 50s style. I restored a lot of neon signs around Austin and the state of Texas, even the TP Motel in Wharton. But I needed a place to work, so I found this old crumbling grocery store called Baker's Fruit Stand, and I bought it. It didn't even have a roof when I got it, but I started working. I moved into the backyard and started working on it, and 8 years later, I had a place that I could be proud of. And one day, this pretty girl moved here from Canada. On her second day, she came in, bought a work of art, and I fell deeply in love with her. And we started dating and spending time together, and I proposed with a neon sign that said, Sarah, will you marry me? She said she would, but I started telling her, like, my dream of being a kid, I really wanted to be a fine artist, just make art for art's sake only, and she said, you know, go for it. If that's your dream, go for it. So I closed the commercial sign part of Roadhouse Relics and opened Roadhouse Relics Art Gallery and dedicated to making these pieces as fine art. And it was tough for a couple of years. We were hardly making any money, but finally the New York Times listed it as a must-see in Austin. I started making pieces for celebrities. I don't know if you can guess who this one was for. It was originally for Texas Monthly editorial, but Willie bought it. I've been shipping these all over the world. I actually shipped a lot of them overseas now. This is a piece that really means a lot to me. This is the Kings of Leon album cover I worked on with Dan Winters and the late Brett Kilrow. And it also shows a sketch and then the finished piece. There's a big gap in between these two pieces of what happens. I start with an idea, I sketch it on gridded vellum, and then I take that and make a transparency from it. I blow it up on the wall, do a overhead projector, and start making the neon pattern, metal pattern, and the paint pattern. And I've got this electric wand that I drag over the images, and it burns little holes in the paper. So when I put the paper onto the finished metal, I pat it with chalk, and the image works through and shows onto the piece. I then start hand lettering the piece and painting all of the details. I don't use any computer graphics. I do all of my own type styles. And then the really fun part for me is weathering a piece. and actually make it look shiny, brand new, and then I'd start wearing it back down just the way Mother Nature would, and then let it rust outside. At a certain point, the neon is back from the neon bender. I put the neon on the piece, put the transformer in it, and plug it in, and it lights up. But what makes this miracle happen? What makes me plug this in and the neon ignites in this tube? This man right here is George Claude, and in 1910 in Paris, he invented the neon sign. He figured out how they captured neon out of the atmosphere. You're breathing neon right now. They pulled it out of the atmosphere. He isolated it, put it in a neon tube, and invented the neon sign. He also patented it. So a man named Earl Anthony bought this Packard sign from him in Paris and had it sent to Los Angeles. From there, you can imagine, you know what happened with neon in America. It took off like crazy. It went everywhere. But I want you to take a minute and just imagine if that guy didn't invent the neon sign, would we even have a Las Vegas? Would we, Route 66 would be very different right now. The movie theaters and the drive-in burger joints, the honky tonks with the neon sign blinking outside. What if none of that existed because of this one guy didn't invent the neon sign? And it's not just the places, it's movies, American Graffiti. What would Casablanca be without Rick's Cafe American neon sign shining? And and a film noir with the hotel sign blinking on and off outside the window. What would country music be without the neon sign? There'd be no Neon Moon. One of my favorite songs is Wayne Hancock's Thunderstorms and Neon Signs. That would have never existed. And then as you're driving home tonight, try to imagine what Austin would look like with no neon. It's such a big part of the identity of this city. I liken all of these elements to like little pieces of fabric, and the neon is the thread that kind of sews this quilt into the American experience. Thank you.
My name's Red Roll Card, and kind of loud, but I'm a guitar player and nerd, and that's me when I was 10 years old, and with a borrowed guitar. And that started my trip to wanting to be a guitar nerd, and it hadn't ended yet. So that's my dad. I don't blame him for all of it. He was a guitar player as well, and taught me a whole lot about life and everything, and music a little bit, and told me not to get into the business, and that I'd be dumb if I did, and I should have a background so that when it didn't pay off that I could play the fiddle or something else. So here I am at about, say, 16 or 17, trying to play the fiddle, and not so good. It didn't work out, so I had always kept the guitar, and that's about it for that one. And here I'm laughing, talking to a girl on a break. But the rest of the time I'm practicing most of the time. As a kid, of course, I practiced at least 10 hours a day as a little kid, and just obsessed with it. And I found a little bit of extra time there at that one. And I'm originally from Canada, and I moved to the States in '86, and I met this fella there in Santa Cruz, California. He was a pedal steel guitar player. And that started my journey here in the States, was down here, and I started in California and worked my way through pretty much the center of the country, and I wound up in Nashville, Tennessee, worked there for a while, and I landed a job with the great Merle Haggard, and I got to play at a bunch of stuff with him and George Jones and a whole bunch of host of other old country people. Most of them are dead now, so they can't deny it. But and speaking of which, there's another one. This was Johnny Gimbel, who's a wonderful fiddle player. Played with Bob Wills and Texas Playboys, and George Strait even. I played started with Wills, I believe, in the late 40s, and then he played right on up till the 90s on, like I say, George Strait records and Merle Haggard records. And this little goofball here is the guy that brought me to Texas. I met him in California when he was about 23, and we've been buddies ever since. So he moved to Nashville when I was living there, and he said, hey, you got to come to Texas. There's lots of good country music. So I want to blame him for coming here. So since then, I've been here 18 years, and I started a band, and I got these three fellas here. Chris Gilson on the drums, been with me for 18 years, and Nate Rowe on the bass have been with me for about 14 or something like that, 13. And we have a piano player as well, Rich Harney. He wasn't there, but he's in my regular band at the Continental Club. So I'm the luckiest guitar player on the planet, I think. I've got to play with a lot of great people, and here's a little picture of Jimmy Vaughn and me banging away on Junior Brown's guitar. Can't get more Texas than that, I don't think. Pretty awesome to be able to be a part of that. And my dog got me a gig at the Blue Dog Rescue. We were the poster child for the calendar. We were calendar boys, my dog Dick and me. Dick's 13 now, and I'm going to change his name to Richard. And this is my beautiful bride. She's sitting right here, grinning. And I can't thank her enough for letting me do what I do and encouraging me. Appreciate that a lot. And here's me with a little skinny guy named Brad Paisley. I met him in Nashville when I lived there, and he was going to Belmont College there, and he's another guitar nut. Of course, we started talking guitar parts and pickups and necks and changing stuff on them, and we've been buddies ever since. I played his wedding. I played on a couple of his albums, and I got this Granny Award here, a Grammy. Yeah. I played on a song with him called Cluster Pluck. I think that's why we got it. It's just in what's in a name. But anyway, that was that. And here at the Continental Club, I've been playing there 18 years on Saturday afternoons and Sunday nights. And this is a little jam session I had going with Brad Paisley and Billy Gibbons. He's the guy in the beard. And yeah, what a hoot to be able to just get on stage and play with those kind of guys. And this is a band that plays Sunday nights at the Continental Club called Hay Bale with an E. And same deal, that band's been there 18 years, thumping away every Sunday night. We used to do 10 to 1:30. Now everybody's old, and we've changed our shift to 7 to 10, and now all the old people that like us have all come back. And this is my hero, Merle Haggard. And this was done, the picture was taken over he was playing at the Nutty Brown Cafe about 3 months before he passed, and called me up and said, hey, you playing tonight? And I said, no, I got an afternoon gig. He said, well, come on, play tonight. So I went and saw him, visited for a couple hours at the end there, and it was awesome. And this old guy, Bill Kirchen, he lives here in town now. He was in the Commander Cody of the Lost Planet Airman. If you ever heard a song called Hot Rod Lincoln, that's the guy. So I get to do a lot of work with him. And this here was a Texas Monthly threat or scare. So I was a bluebonnet thing, and the magazine article was titled Red, White, and Blue. Oh, yeah. And I know this is probably not the town to bring this guy's picture in, but he's a fantastic guitar player, and I was scared he wanted to come see me play, and I said, come bring your guitar and sit in with us. He said, oh, okay, great. And then as soon as I hung up the phone, I thought, this is probably my last job in Austin ever, because I thought he'd talk on the mic and say a bunch of stuff, but he was a real gentleman, and more than anything, he was a fantastic player, and he seemed like a pretty good guy. So thanks for listening to me, and thanks again.
Miss Gillespie, that bitch, convinced me that I could dance in high school. She also convinced me that I would get to choreograph for the high school senior dance concert. She lied and crushed my newfound dreams, and so I dedicated my life to becoming a choreographer. So take that, bitch. If you know anything about me or my work, you know I like to work in series, and that I love structures, geography, and the challenges of unique locations. My first series of works was inspired by Mount Everest climbing expeditions. My second series of works was inspired by Native Texans, Central Texas geography, and the waves of newcomers throughout history. During this series, I rediscovered my affinity for dirt, water, and trees. Water is truly amazing and fun to work with, so we did it several times in different bodies of water, and we'll continue to do more of it. I really like numbers. I never count a single 8 count in any of my dances, but will have dancers repeat something 47 times, and for very good reason. My third series was called 1111. I produced 11 shows in 11 months with Natalie George. Each month, I choreographed a new dance and hosted a guest choreographer. We had 44 performances, 20 dance works, 8 venues, 8 zip codes, and over 100 artists, technicians, and volunteers, and about 2,000 audience members. There's one phrase most commonly used by my dancers as a response to the things I tell them, and that is, "What the hell?" And that is the color of the bandana, my bandana was supposed to be. And this is the bandana it turned out to be. Can we do this together on my count of 3, that most common response? 1, 2, 3. What the hell? Anyway, this is neon, seriously. Okay. Based on what I just told you, you might assume that the dancers said when I announced 1111 what they might have said. So instead they said, "Fuck yes." And this is Requiem for a Leaf. Every time we raised the garage doors of a 4,000 square foot Quonset hut, the place would fill with leaves. It was like a leaf vacuum. My dance partner hated leaf blowers, so that's what we did. 11-11-02, Bulldozers in Heaven. Same venue, different dance, cleverly named by John Wyndham. Originally, the hunt was filled with oil drums, and the view gave perspective on the number of construction sites and changing cityscape. This venue is now part of Better Half Coffee and Cocktails. Panning Memory. This was a fun new creative process. I opened up the music files designed for quad output and asked the dancers to transcribe the data within the panning modules to use as a guide for creative movement. This venue was once Dario's and is now Suerte. 11-11-05 was made at Live Oak Brewing Company, completely captivated by the planes flying overhead, the playful energy of the beer gardens, and the celebration of German beer culture. We romanticized about the traveling, the planes flying over, and community beer drinking. 11-11-06 was called Wake. The lighting and set design was installed while I was away. I walked into a choreography playground. I was collaborating with a woman out of town. We made a plan over the phone. I had one rehearsal. She arrived. We finished the piece in 4 days. And overall, it was just fucking satisfying. Wake was made at Casey Gray Home Furniture Store. Scott Ellswood and Brett Jennings are amazing human beings, and this warehouse and showroom has continued to be sought after as an arts venue. 11-11-07 was called Drive-In. The original took place at Saratoga Copper. It was an acre-long property with a driveway just as long. When I saw the employees' cars lined up, I knew instantly that was how the audience would experience the piece, and we wanted more. At Rogie Ranch, just last week, we took it to a whole new level. This time, it took me 6 visits, 4 rehearsals before I could envision how the audience would see it. I practically am stumped until I know how that will happen. This is Rohaline. We had repeated failure and endless obstacles. We went through 3 different venues and didn't find a home until 9 days before the show at Dimension Gallery. The challenges were truly rewarding, and this sweet struggle of a piece was recently reimagined by the guest artist Blip Switch. Return was 11/11/09. The venue was Community First, a village of tiny homes designated to house the chronically homeless. We learned one of the main causes of homelessness was loss of family. We also learned that one big fear of homeless people is that they have a fear of dying and no one remembering them or even knowing. We couldn't ignore this information and let it inspire. The finale. Joan Havard represents all the venue partners we've had and welcomed us with unimaginable support. Joan let us loose into the wilds of Carson Creek Ranch. We celebrated with hundreds of people the culmination of an entire year's work and community built. I work completely in collaboration with others. I found an incredible, sensitive community of artists that are psyched about my vision and have insane intuition seeing it through. We work hard to share a voice. I build narrative with sketches and other people's memories. I also invent games. I'm inspired by people that test human capacity. Music is almost always developed separately, but simultaneously, and rarely do they two come together until a few days before the show. I'm told that I'm too seduced by music and I should make dances without it. The truth is, I do almost every time and process, but then to see the work at the last minute, be seduced by music is magic and I love it. I began working in my dad's cafe when I was 14. Since then, I've never stopped working in the industry. I'm equally passionate about hospitality and cling to a concept of unequaled service. We strive to honor uniqueness, freedoms, and limitations of venues and offer unparalleled experience each time. After having 44 nights of performances and a cocktail at each one, I now have a cocktail company called The Elegant Kid. Before dance, I had dreams of becoming a designer of homes and bridges. One of my first jobs was for an architect. I spent every morning shading bricks and making sure my wake and bake boss always had his favorite pink cookies. Though I can totally zen on tedium, that process was slow and my mind was too busy to be stocking stoner cookies. My college counselor advised me to dance instead of become an architect when I retire. I took her advice.
This is my cousin Frances. She's 93 years old and she lives in Scottsdale, Arizona. Despite having been born 50 years apart, we're practically best friends. But the thing about Frances is that she loves Donald Trump. And I can't stand the son of a bitch. Not only does she love Donald Trump, she's loved him from the very beginning, from the fateful elevator ride at Trump Tower to Billy Bush and beyond. She attended his rallies and volunteered for his campaign, working the phones from her little kitchen on Jackrabbit Road. This man is going to be president, she told me, well ahead of the primaries. He's the only one who can save America. And like any sensible person, especially the one who's lived in New York City, I laughed and told her she was insane. On the day after the 2016 election, when I was hungover and she called to gloat, I said some nasty things and we didn't speak for 3 weeks. Many of my friends were having the same encounters, refusing to go home for the holidays or severing relationships with family. For Frances and me, the rift caused a deep wound. And once we made up, we vowed to never let politics interfere with our friendship again. Frances and I come from 2 different Americas. I grew up on MTV and Bill Clinton. Her father, my grandfather's brother, died of dust pneumonia during the Great Depression. Her mother then suffered a nervous breakdown and abandoned her children, leaving 12-year-old Frances to care for her siblings on her own. I write about her saga in my most recent book, The Kings of Big Spring. In 1939, the state took custody and sent them all to separate orphanages. This is the last photo they took together. Frances ended up hitchhiking to San Francisco and marrying the steel guitar player for Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys. Then moved to Arizona and got involved in conservative politics. She worked for Barry Goldwater and helped Republicans elected nationwide. Later, she helped Phyllis Schlafly defeat the ERA. Now she loves Trump, especially when he tweets. A few months ago, after the umpteenth controversy to erupt from the White House, I asked her what she thought of him now. What do I think of him? I like him even more, she said, over the din of Fox News. In fact, I'll drive clear to Washington just to shake his hand. I saw an opportunity to address the divide tearing our country apart. Then I'll drive you, I said. We'll go together. Which is what we did. In mid-March, we took off from Big Spring and drove 2,000 miles to D.C., stopping along the way to meet people who challenged us politically, who represented our fears and frustrations, these monsters we concoct in our silos, yet never fully engage. If exposure is the greatest antiseptic to bigotry, we were giving ours a proper airing out. The evangelical pastor in Oklahoma quotes Bible to justify supporting an immoral president. As a former evangelical myself and now a progressive Christian, it's easy to see him as my enemy. His positions on gay people incite my rage, but his message for us both stops me cold, that love is patient and kind, and love is not easily provoked. On that sliver of common ground, we held hands and prayed. Conservatives love to hate the Black Lives Matter movement, or BLMs as Francis calls them, so we go to Ferguson, Missouri, where it all began. We eat lunch with Mike Brown and his wife Cal. We discuss the pain of their son Michael's death at the hands of police, the power of therapy and family, and good recipes for homemade lemonade. God sees us all the same, Francis says as we leave. No one deserves to lose their child. Next to Alton, Illinois, to hang out with Phyllis Schlafly's daughter, who tells me about the Me Too movement. Sexual harassment is not a problem for strong women, she says. The strong women are being harassed, I say. What we see in Me Too is just a lot of whining. It's no crime to ask someone on a date, and if you whine about it, you're just a whiner. Common ground, I'll check it later. If there's a group that undermines, that needs to be seen as fully human, it's the conservatives, it's the American Muslims. So we go to the Noor Islamic Center in Columbus. They challenge Francis on Trump. They share how he makes them feel and welcome in their own country. Francis replies by telling them, well, he's not throwing a pity party. I think the gloves are going to come off. But they don't. Instead, our Muslim hosts embrace her. One woman points out how they both value faith and family. Another compliments her complexion. And after we finish, they surround her for hugs and photos, and then we hold hands and pray. When I finally pull out of her, she's holding a gift box of assorted baklava. They were just the nicest people, she said. In Wilmington, Ohio, Michael Mockerly on the left, an evangelical I've known for years, goes off on gay and transgender people and says some really nasty shit. So what do? Call him a homophobe and burn the bridge like everyone else? That just seems too lazy. Instead, I invite Mike to my church here in Austin to meet some of my gay and trans Christian friends. He agrees, and I keep the bridge open, because if I don't, who will? These encounters expose dark places in my own conscience and force me to examine my beliefs and biases. At the hotel each night, I only watch Fox News. And what I see on Hannity and Laura Ingraham always seems to clash with the reality in the small towns we visit. People aren't so reduced to action figures in a culture war. Everywhere, people surprise us. At a gas station in West Virginia, we asked this guy what he thinks about March for Our Lives in D.C., happening as we speak. He answers by lifting his shirt. Francis laughs and I roll my eyes. I'm for gun rights, he says, but I don't fall in line with the NRA as much as some of the nut jobs out here. Turns out he supports more stringent background checks and raising the age to buy weapons. We meet these high school kids on their way to march. They're from Logan, West Virginia, a small town dominated by poverty and opioid addiction. Francis doesn't want to meet them and thinks they'll be mean about Trump. It turns out these poor and mostly minority kids aren't angry at all. They actually want the president to succeed. Strive to be the best president you can be, one girl said. Just strive to be the best. Everywhere we go, from St. Louis to Charlottesville, we encounter people who are tired of the fighting and division, afraid of what our country has become. What I realize is that we are a nation of decent individuals, people who wouldn't hesitate to help someone, whether they're black, brown, straight, or gay. One-on-one, we're the America we imagine, yet we'll turn around and vote for systems that rip children from their mothers. We reach the White House on Palm Sunday and take some bad pictures. After many attempts to meet the president, we are not successful. I fly home to liberal Austin and Frances goes back to Scottsdale, where Fox News rumbles again in the background. Over the coming weeks, she talks about missing the road and her friends we met, how much she's been writing letters. She still loves Trump, but I know the trip wasn't in vain. Before leaving D.C., I overhear her say the journey was her crowning achievement. No longer is the country so small or scary. All I know, the next time that Hannity disparages Muslims, she'll remember that baklava. As for me, I'm still feeling conflicted by some of the encounters. But the following Sunday, on Easter, I'm at church listening to the old resurrection story when something happens. It's a tale I've heard my entire life, ever since I was a child, but that morning it takes on newer and greater meaning. Resurrection is a force that lives on within us, my pastor says. Resurrection begins with you. You are the healing of the nation. The message spreads itself into all my dark places. Frustration and anxiety fall away, and I realize that the journey into the divide has only begun. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. The Bike Zoo was founded as a collaboration between bike builders and puppet makers for the Austin First Night Parade in 2005. At that parade, more people took my picture than had in my whole life prior, and I knew that we had something very special and very real, and I wanted to make a life out of it, and here we are. I never did consider myself an artist, but when I say bike builders and puppet makers, I am a bike builder, and this is an example of the work that I am known for here in Austin, and one example of why the other founder of the Bike Zoo sought me out to collaborate with. I built many cargo-carrying bikes before founding the Bike Zoo, and I'm going to introduce the Bike Zoo animals in the order in which they were created. The praying mantis is built upon an extended tricycle frame with a gooseneck type trailer. I built this load-carrying tractor trailer before the inception of the Bike Zoo, and it was the main reason that I became founder of the Bike Zoo. It is capable of efficiently carrying and moving many times its own weight. We then developed the butterflies. People often ask, how long did it take to build that? To which I must reply that there is no easy answer. It has been an evolution. What was first bikes became bikes with wings, which soon became bikes with wings and eyes, which finally became bikes with wings and bodies that include faces with eyes and antennae. So there really is no easy answer to the question. The Bike Zoo is proud to be interactive and family friendly, and these scenes are typical of Bike Zoo events. We are used to being the most popular, most talked about, and the most photographed edition wherever we go. Next came the giant rattlesnake. It is 80 feet long, has 34 wheels, and is articulated in 15 places. It accommodates up to 6 pedalers, and the 16 units of the snake frame are connected in a very deliberate way so that the weight of each piece and of each rider is shared among several other pieces. Next came Anne, Bat Anne, working here at Austin Bat Festival. Her wings flap as she is pedaled, and her head is animated. She, as with all of our other creatures, is illuminated with 12-volt LED rope lights and batteries. She is built upon a custom extended tricycle frame. Next came Big Al, the owl, shown here at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. His wings flap as he is pedaled, his head moves as the performer steers, and his mouth opens and closes. We spent a couple years working on him, and we were motivated in part by customers whose mascot was the owl. So we figured we would get some good bookings if we were able to make an amazing owl. Being family friendly is a priority to us, so wherever practical, we use soft materials so as to make the creature soft to the touch. We have had to rebuild Al several times for events throughout the course of his life. Built to fulfill the demand for family-friendly interaction, the carousel is well suited for the young and those with special needs, as its center platform is very accommodating, being able to hold whatever and whomever is placed upon it. Parents with very young kids or folks who may not be able to hold on can sit or lay down on it. Next came our reindeer-drawn sleigh. It was inspired for and created for the Downtown Austin Alliance Sing-Along and Holiday Stroll. It is about 40 feet long, has 14 wheels, and is articulated in 5 places. It accommodates 5 pedaling performers and up to 4 adults in its sleigh. Stella, the bald eagle, took us several years to build. Similar to the bat and the owl, her wings flap as she is pedaled. More advanced than either the bat or the owl, her neck contains 5 vertebrae with many springs and control cables, allowing her head and neck to realistically move in any direction like a real bird. Her beak opens and closes, her talons extend and retract, and she makes eagle sounds. She demands attention. People are unable to walk past her without stopping, looking, and taking a picture. There are events and places that she clearly belongs. She and the Circuit of the Americas are an obvious fit. Getty, our latest creation, the armadillo, is so realistic that he's even fooled me at events that we've taken him to, and he is the most delightful to operate. The laid-back position of the rider is so comfortable in every way, easy on the rider's back, neck, shoulder, and arms. He even offers the performer shade. His feet move in a walking motion as he is pedaled. His head moves up and down and side to side, easily controlled by the puppeteer. His ears move and his tail is animated too. The head, tail, and legs are foam, making him soft, spongy, and family-friendly all around. He is a true Texas icon and an Austin original. Here we have the Mantis at the Roswell UFO Parade and Festival, having just completed and winning first place in the parade. We won first place in the parade the year prior with the Owl. I did not realize until doing this event that according to witness accounts, the Mantis is one of the common forms of extraterrestrial beings. Here we are at the Fort Worth Parade of Lights. We are thrilled to have won the judge's choice of first place. There were marching bands, beasts of burden, and motorized floats, over 110 entrants with strict entrance requirements, and we are proudly shine brighter than all of them. Next, we appear at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway at an event with over 100,000 people per day, demonstrating our ability to travel and perform at large, high-profile events and venues. We have been all over the place with the snake and have even crossed international bridges into Mexico on several occasions and in various locations. The Bike Zoo is right at home at the fanciest events and the most expensive venues, such as the $500 per plate fundraising gala shown in the top left corner. We are equally at home across the border in Mexico, as seen on the top right, and we enjoy having performed in New York City at the Queens Hall of Science, shown in the lower left. I could have easily showed you all an additional 20 slides. It was not easy to decide which 20 to use, but at the end of the day, what's most important is my crew. Many of these folks are artists who make the Bike Zoo dreams into reality, and all are performers. We are uniformly dressed in black so as to complement the butterflies, but we often wear all white if we are going to be riding the snake, the reindeer draw sleigh, or the owl, as white goes well with these creatures. Also, I have a whole bunch of postcards and Bike Zoo booklets up front. They're free. Please take as many as you'd like. Thank you.
All right, my name is Jonathan Smith, and I am Lake Flito Architects project architect on your new central library. I have been given the impossible task of distilling the 11,000 hours of my career and a 200,000 square foot building into 20 slides, so here we go. What a library is and will be continued to shift under our feet throughout the course of the project. When the voters approved the bond for the building in 2006, we didn't all carry libraries around in our pockets as smartphones. And the first tweet had just been sent that spring. Greater Austin had 500,000 less people than today. Bigness. Everything about this job is big. The building is big at roughly 200,000 square feet. The team is big with over 31 consultants. And the aspirations were big to be the best daylit library in the United States. All for the same price as a late 1990s action movie. Location. The building occupies a once-in-a-lifetime site in downtown Austin. Here is Austin as it is today. It is an anchor of the new Seaholm neighborhood and is the western gateway to downtown at the confluence of Shoal Creek and Lady Bird Lake. You can also, well, I ran out of time. Enough on background. Let's start the project up. What's first? Tons of community meetings. We needed to hear from you what you wanted, and we got some great responses. Overall, the most interesting thing to me was that Austin really cared about its books, and consequently, we're probably the only new central library that has more books than the previous library. Goal setting. As architects, we love our sketchbooks, but on this job, we set aside the urge to immediately sketch until our entire integrated team set rigorous and measurable goals for the project. Then it was time to get out sketchbooks, rough clay models, and computer apps to design the building. Daylight workshop. As daylight was so crucial to the project, we focused a great deal on it. Now I'm about to give away our trade secret for one of the days we tested the daylight. This will enable you to go home tonight and build your very own daylight model of that bathroom remodel you're working on. So now, call and gather your architecture team, daylight designer, and interior designer. Step 1, build a meticulously detailed scale model of the library's atrium at home out of foam core, basswood, and construction paper. Use materials that are the same color and texture as the actual materials to be used in the building. Model everything. Step 2, photograph the interior of the building utilizing real-life conditions. Sunlight is scalable, which is kind of crazy if you think too hard about it, and you are able to point your building towards the sun at different angles to simulate the entire year and entire days of sunlight in your space. Step 3, use luminance mapping to really examine where the light is coming from. You can also blank off all but one window to really understand how each one contributes to lighting the whole. Step 4, stay up all night retuning and rebuilding the roof shape to repeat steps 1 through 3. On to construction. All the tuning of the daylight and the rest of the design phases was now put into the construction document set. For this job, it was an imposing 3 phone book size specifications and 2 600-plus page sets of drawings. At this point, we're 3 minutes and 20 seconds into the PechaKucha and 4 years into the project. On to construction. Do you like wearing hard hats and steel-toed boots? Do you like tall ladders and rickety-seeming scaffolding? Then you will love construction. You will learn so much during construction, including how they get the teeny tiny last bit of dirt out of a hole 3 stories down. Here are a few short stories from construction. The mat slab. Since we're next to the lake, instead of putting in piers, we instead placed the largest concrete mat slab up until that point in Austin's history. The mat consists of a 7-foot thick, 40,000 square foot, 21-hour continuous concrete placement. Mock-ups. The building's concrete superstructure we wanted to expose, which sounds easy, but it's holding the entire building up and is the finish of the building and has to not be damaged during construction. So in order to get it perfect, we did over 30 mock-ups. That was a typical view of a Tuesday morning during that time period. This is a view of the atrium during construction, and you can see the bridges there that are made of steel. I had the inevitable task of making sure the shop drawings were right for those, so when the crane brought them in, they would fit. This slide is entitled "The Day I Started Sleeping Again." In the photo, we are standing on a scaffolding that's 6.5 floors above the atrium, on what the contractor referred to as the dance floor. And when I saw how the light was grazing off just the steel studs, I realized that all the daylighting work was really going to pay off. Details and finishes. 23% of the project is made from local materials, and here you can see a craftsman meticulously laying 4-inch by 4-inch end-grain mesquite wood block from Luling, Texas. And basically after they lay those, they run over it with like a Zamboni sander, and it becomes this beautiful floor finish. Renderings. It is rare that a project looks like the renderings, and I'm extremely proud of the entire team, the clients that trusted us, and the hundreds of talented artists and craftspeople who constructed it to have the actual building outperform the render. Build it and they will come. At the beginning of the job, there was a lot of discussion amongst our team about how we create a living room for Austin, about how we could attract people to this building, and I love seeing it actually happen like our wildest dreams back in 2009. I love seeing kids who are at the elevators with their parents and they want to take the stairs. I love seeing the shared learning rooms, our co-working spaces, filled with young people starting new ventures. I love seeing pictures of weddings and hearing stories of engagements taking place at the building. For me, it was 11,000 hours and 3 night mouth guards of my career. For Austin, the new Central Library has become its new civic living room, and we hope it becomes part of your Austin routine.
Music grew on us because of our early exposure to multiple genres. It all started with the Beatles song, Here Comes the Sun, not to mention the countless influential albums of Selena y Los Dinos. Way before we became a band, we realized that we had a passion for performing together, choreographing dances, and singing our favorite songs for our parents in the living room.
As we continuously went to music lessons, we individually became attached to our own instruments. Tori was playing guitar, I was playing rhythms on a snare pad, and Tiffany was on keyboard. We would meet each other in one of our rooms and would follow the sheet music we were given, and eventually started playing songs together, and discovered that our sisterly bond made us better musicians. Our first gig was at South by Southwest in 2012, where we performed at the tiniest bar in Texas. We played covers from Nelly Furtado to the Beatles and our own original rock songs. After the show, we were interviewed by YNN. This was the time where we realized what it felt like to be noticed by the community. With that came different Austin gigs, including festivals and shows we used to call exposure gigs. Because we were so young at these gigs, the standards were set so low for us, and we were often the first ones on the lineup with no audience, and our sound guys still setting up. Eventually, we started to get more gigs and we built a platform. We've always been taught to give back to our community, and we wanted to carry that over to the band. So we created a mission statement for ourselves. It was to give back to it was to be a voice for those who cannot be one for themselves. From there, we started to play for many organizations, whether it was us playing for the cause or helping that day. Some of these organizations included Susan Komen Race for the Cure, Easter Seals, Austin Dog Rescue, Dyal's Children, These Not Words, Girls Rock, Mariposa's Assisted Living Facility, and many more. It has been an honor to work with these organizations. It fills us with happiness that we were able to give back, and we hope to continue to do so. In 2013, we were archived in the Austin History Center as the youngest Latina band in Austin. We received the award. When we received the award, many other Latina women were present who had been awarded for being a colored artist in Austin. Being exposed to so many other women who have lived through this music scene, we heard stories that weren't recorded or written in books. It showed us just how important it is to continue to do what we are doing.
So in that previous slide, we were given the Emerging Artist Award at the Mexican American Cultural Center at the Austin Awards of Excellence. At this time in our musical career, the term networking was very important to us. We've had the opportunity to meet lots of musicians like the Los Lonely Boys, Dale Watson, Kathy Valentine from the Go-Go's, Nina Diaz, and in the spring of 2016, we had the opportunity to make our first EP and film our first music video with the help of AJ Vallejo. The wheel that we were riding was beginning to move faster, but the bond that we shared together as sisters put that fear aside. Our chemistry on stage speaks a lot for the relationship that we have together. We'll walk up there and grab our instruments and then telepathically tell each other what we're gonna do to surprise the audience. The first time we had the privilege to meet the writer for the Austin Chronicle, Margaret Moser, she met us at San Antonio at the Market Square, and she surprised us by going up on stage in the middle of our set and telling the audience that we needed to be on their radar. She became a beautiful guiding light in our lives by her constant supportive words and her encouragement to stay pure and true to our passion. We first heard about the Austin Music Awards when we were ranked number 10 as Best Performing Band Under 18. In 2014, we promoted the ballot and won our first Austin Music Award. Being young musicians meant that we had many things on our plate, from AP classes, National Honor Society, marching band, extra college classes, and homework every night. We've had to find the time to practice and play shows. But over the time, we've understood that the fact of education is truly powerful. So at this point in time, we started to receive more attention from the Austin Chronicle, the Mexican American Cultural Center, and getting bigger gigs like the ISTE conference where we played in front of over 13,000 people. And so since we're young adults, constantly changing and evolving, our sound follows that path too. And music is like a therapy to us, so we write based on our experiences, whether it be crushes, heartbreaks, teen angst, or our take on political issues. And with that said, we bring that same personal passion onto the stage with us every gig we play because it's real life to us. Our journey has now become self-propelled. We've found our sound, we understand the tunnels of the music business, and we've grown as creatives. We know what we want and how we want to do it. And even though only one of us can drive, I'm still going to say that we took the wheel and chose the path for our own music career. And with that said, we're breaking the barrier that our parents and grandparents had to go through, from not being able to speak Spanish in school to being judged for the Spanish music they listen to. Our culture is a part of our life and is something we're forever proud of. Even though we didn't grow up speaking Spanish, music has always been a bridge for us, connecting us to our roots. Over the 6 years that we've been performing, so many iconic Austin musicians, community leaders, and even politicians have contributed to our story. We've come a long way, but looking back, we still feel like those tiny preteens who just wanted to play music and be a part of something special. And growing up, we saw a box around Latina musicians, and now that we're a part of that platform, we embrace the importance of sharing our cultura to expand people's understanding. And as artists, we hope that our music will be a part of the movement that makes us all one people. I want to thank you guys for having us. It's an honor to be here at PechaKucha. Okay, so this first song is called Diamonds and Pearls, and it's one of the original rock songs that we wrote when we were really little, so. about how certain people in the world take their power and use it against people like minorities or just people in general. And we're kind of pissed about it, so we just wrote a song about it. Just called Give It to the People.
dance or something. This is like a show.